It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Mike Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Appreciate you riding with us. I see a lot of folks joining with us this morning on our web stream. Glad to have all you folks. I can see some folks over there in Baltimore and New York and locally here in Mountain Home area, West Plains, Huntington. Thanks for joining with us. Appreciate you. Some folks out there in Seattle, you're up early in the morning. You know, we are rapidly reaching a point where even the most supportive person in this administration, or the most supportive American who is really just an observer, is really clearly at a point where they recognize we have reached a constitutional crisis in our government. I say that because as a result of the statements yesterday by the president, in which he is coming out and saying that he has a fix now for the problems that he's created by virtue of the misrepresentation and the flat-out lies that he's been telling to Americans in order to get this Obamacare debacle accepted. He is now making unilateral statements that he has the authority to change the law on a unilateral basis, which has been passed by Congress. Now, so far he's made some 17 adjustments already. And my question is, where is a constitutional authority who is recognized and accepted across the United States as a constitutional expert to stand up and say, hold on a second, whoa, wait a minute. There does not exist an authority to accomplish that. I mean, he's lied to get it done. He's bungled it. He's already unilaterally changed it repeatedly, which is outside of his authority to do so. The idiots in Congress are going to let him do it again. Why isn't some constitutional expert who has a national level of credibility and a viewpoint and a view, or at least is high enough up the public view echelon ladder to be recognized, calling all of them out on this? This, folks, is well over the line of high crimes and misdemeanors to even the most objective or the most supportive viewer. And to anyone who's even remotely objective about this, there is absolutely no denying the position that we're in. I mean, yesterday he came out and said, yeah, well, you know, that plan that we laid out for America that you based your decision upon, well, it wasn't quite accurate. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow Americans to go in there and renew their plans and keep the plans that they had for a window of a year. With all due respect, doesn't that sound a little Clintonese to you? I mean, I remember that when Bill Clinton was telling us that he didn't have sex, only she did. You know, no matter what you view the Obamacare debacle as, no matter what your motives, no matter what your ideological perspective, no matter where you stand, on what side of the fence you reside, there is one thing that is clear. This president lied. He is a serial, pathological liar. No caveats, no disclaimers. And it's time that Congress began to take immediate action to remove this man from office. Now, in saying that, I have to make one statement that there's a roadblock here to accomplishing this goal. One, there's a lot of time that's associated towards an impeachment move. Two, there's a major, and it's not a branch, it's not even a tree, it's a sequoia laying across the road, blocking the path of impeachment, and that's Eric Holder. Now, the House announced yesterday that they are actively looking at removing him via impeachment also for his contempt, criminal and civil, and that would be a major step in the right direction. The second issue is that the Senate and the makeup of the Senate has to change, because you have to remember that the House begins impeachment, the trial is held in the Senate, and remember who is the Chief Justice that sits over an impeachment trial. It would be Roberts. And we already know that he is malleable. He's been corrupted. He's been coerced. He's been manipulated. And whether or not that took the form of some kind of a threat or some, secret he doesn't want out that the NSA's got on him, I don't know. But he has already approved of this and went way outside of what anyone with an objective judicial view would immediately recognize to be way outside the boundaries of one, the Supreme Court justices or most senior justices' role, and two, he clearly was not looking at this in objective viewpoint. He went out of his way to figure a way to make this legal. And I use that term legal with a lot of chagrin, because Thomas Jefferson was the one who said to us that a law that is passed, which is violative of the Constitution itself, is null and void on its face. Our topics this morning are going to be the Obamacare fix and how it creates a constitutional crisis. I'm going to let you hear a video of a guy who's running for Congress, but I've listened to this guy's videos before. He's actually pretty good. I want you to listen to it. It's only about 2 minutes long, but he explains the position that I'm taking on this pretty well. He's in pretty good lockstep with my thinking on this, and I want you to hear it. Our second topic is 8 new coal plants have been shut down. So, according to the president's earlier promise when he was running for office, or just before he put his name his hat into the ring, we can expect that our electricity rates are going to, quote, necessarily skyrocket. Now, I don't know about you, but I've already seen about a 30% increase in my electricity cost over the last 24 months alone. And if it goes much higher, it'll be the equivalent of having a second mortgage. Our third topic is a new gun rights war. It's on again, folks. And mark my words, you've got tyrants and traitors like King in New York who are siding with the administration on this. Like most left and right coast conservatives, quote unquote, King is what the middle of the nation would call a conservative liberal. Always quantify your position. Never call yourself just a conservative, because when you do that, you lump yourself in with traitors like this, like McCain, like Chris Christie. Always call yourself a constitutional conservative patriot. When someone says to you, well, what would you call yourself? I call myself a constitutional conservative and a patriot. I believe in microscopic federal government and miniature state government. They shouldn't even be, we should have to look for their effect in our lives. Our fourth topic is going to be judicial terrorism and how the courts are allowing a police state to exist. And that's going to be an eye-opening discussion. So please stay with us this morning. We're going to cover a lot of ground. I know I'm going to jump around to a few different topics here, but I got to tell you something, folks. There is so much happening that it's the equivalent of, for all intents and purposes, trying to drink out of a fire hose. I mean, the amount of information that is out there that I want to share with you is so extensive, I can't possibly do it all. And that's why I always encourage you as a critical thinker to be cognizant and to educate yourself. Just take what I give you as the tip of the iceberg, and don't even buy what I believe. These are my opinions. They're not yours. All I do is comment on what I see out there coming through across the news wires. But I expect you to take it as a launching point. This is I'm the end of the dock. It's up to you to get in the boat and go forth and fish. Fish for information. Gather data. Then and only then can you make a decision. If you're sitting on the ideological fence and you don't know where you stand on a given issue, make sure you're doing your homework so that you have enough information to make an informed decision. When and only when you have all of that information gathered, you've looked at both the liberal perspective, the conservative perspective, the agnostic perspective, the moderate perspective, the far right, the far left. Then you have a basis by which to make a decision. You have a basis by which to form an opinion. Please don't buy mine and carry it around like a parrot on your shoulder squawking. And you shouldn't buy anyone else's either. Your job is to be discerning. Your job is to be a critical thinker. And the only way that you're going to get there is by leaving your mind open to hearing positions and viewpoints that don't agree with you, even when they are completely diametrically opposed to your viewpoint, when they are 180 degrees facing the other way from where you stand or what you believe or the preconceived bias you have on any given issue. Then and only then can you actually sit down and make a decision. All right, so let's get into our first story. You know, we're in a position now where, and you gotta question the issue of prosecutorial discretion. That's what the president's calling this. He's saying that you can keep your health care plan for at least one more year after a flawed mea culpa that he threw out there to the press the other day. Well, the truth is, you don't have prosecutorial discretion as a president. He took an oath, and the oath says that he will faithfully uphold the laws of the nation, even when he doesn't agree with them. Which is why when you got things like the DREAM Act, which actually never really passed, but they're implementing it by judicial discretion, you've got to ask yourself the obvious question. If the law enforcement agencies in the country decided to only pursue and prosecute those people that they didn't like, or only those laws that they agreed with, what kind of a mess of a rule of law would we have? The rule of law applies across the board, all the time to everybody. End of argument. And if it doesn't, then we don't have a rule of law. What we have is some kind of thugocracy. It's up to the individual department or person or cop or Justice Department official or president to determine what laws he or she wants to carry out, and the rest of them can go hang. Well, so does that mean that when the police officer pulls up and he sees someone he knows coming out the door with something that doesn't belong to them, he can ignore that crime? Isn't that essentially the same thing? When the police show up and it's a bank robber, but he's a popular guy in town, should they all just holster their weapons and let him walk out? Is that any different? To make matters worse, you've got Howard Dean. Now, Howard Dean is unquestionably, arguably, a man of confusion. And yet, even he is questioning the legal authority, and these are his words, not mine. Here's what he said. He said, I wonder if he has the legal authority to do this, since this was a congressional bill that set this up. Ladies and gentlemen, That's Howard Dean. This is the past chairman of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. Every time I hear that phrase, DNC, I think of the euphemism for abortion, which is dilation and cuterage. Sorry, that's an aside, but it does jump into my mind every time because that's what the liberal mindset is. It's an abortion of our Constitution. They go in there and they destroy it every single time. Now, in addition to the fact that the president doesn't have the legal authority to complete these actions, they're now admitting, and there's a story I posted up on our Facebook page, and by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, we always post all of our content or all of our sources in the bottom of those, in the bottom of the description that tells you what the topic is about for that given episode. So, you don't have to say, well, this guy's talking out of his rear end. He doesn't have any basis for those kinds of statements. Go look at the information and use it as the end of the dock and launch yourself out there. Find more information. Don't just parrot my opinions. Create your own. Because when you create your own, then you have a basis by which to support them. When you have that information and that knowledge in your hands and someone disagrees with your position, you can recite facts or you can recite figures or you can support it by having a logical, well-reasoned argument. And I don't mean argument as in bet, 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 bet. I mean argument as in what you would use in a court of law, a positioning. That is what this is about. Our job, your job, is to wake up and educate those around you. So use the skill set that you have to be able to go out there and articulate your positions in an argument that makes sense, is well-reasoned, bears the hallmarks of logic. That's the only way that you're ever going to get people to say, I think he's right about that. One other thing that I think we fail at, by the way, and then I'm going to let you listen to this guy's video, just kind of an aside, but one of the things I think that we do where we fail is instead of opening up our discussion with just the arguments and the positions, which is fine, but I think we should make a conscious effort to also make sure that we're couching the discussion that we're going to have in the right way. Because, one, it leads to, an open mind on the part of the person or the group that you're speaking to. But also, in addition to that, it fosters the ability to understand and be willing to accept that which you're about to lay out. And what I think we should be saying is, I want you to recognize that what we're going to talk about here may necessarily conflict with the preconceived ideas that you have. What I'm going to ask is that during the course of whatever it is that we're going to discuss here, that you at least listen with an open mind and admit that it's possible that you could be wrong about the issue. And if you're willing to do that, then we can have a good dialogue back and forth. Otherwise, it'll descend into you get angry, I get angry, and we end up, just shouting at each other, which accomplishes nothing. So let's not be emotional about it. Let's be logical. And I'm telling you right now that if you do that, it will change the tenor of the conversation. The reason I say that is because one of the number one tactics that is in use by the progressive and the liberal arguments that are put forth are, as soon as they lose on logic and reason, they immediately descend to emotional arguments. And we see it over and over and over and over again. So shortcut that by announcing in advance and making that statement in advance. And, you're going to have to put it in your own words, but the idea is that you're getting them to agree in advance that we're not going to go there. We're not going to descend to emotion. We're going to look at this based on facts, based on logic, based on reason. There is a place for emotion, but it's not in this discussion where we're talking about things like fact. I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, I watched Fox News, and I listened to Bill O'Reilly talking, and he made a statement that I was just stunned by. He said, the Constitution can only is and I'm paraphrasing this. I'd have to actually go back and find it. It wasn't last night. It was the night before. So that would make it Wednesday night. And maybe you can find it if you want. But what he basically said was that the Constitution can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And I thought to myself, wow, that's just not true. The truth is, if you want to know what the Constitution says, read what the founders and the guys who wrote it had to say. They wrote this stuff down in these two documents called the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist Papers. Now, and I don't care whether you get Mary Webster's book or not, but that's a good one because it turns them into plain English. But I also strongly encourage you to make sure that you get the originals, and you can download them off the web. They're free. Get the original Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers. The reason they were called Federalist and Anti-Federalist is because there were those who were Federalists and those who were Anti-Federalists and, big government, small government, whatever. The point is, these are the writings of the men who actually wrote the Constitution. And it was their explanation for their intentions to a general public because they couldn't write, a tome the thickness of War and Peace for the Constitution. So they outlined their bullet points in the Constitution and then used the Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers and their writings to express to the American population, look, this is this thing we've created. It's called the Constitution. And we're going to explain to you what our thinking and our logic was behind these items, these bullet points. So here's the bullet point, like a PowerPoint presentation. You show the bullet point, and then you explain what that bullet point means. It doesn't mean that you take that bullet point and you make your own interpretation of it. So you read the Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers, the pro and the con of each given issue, and the truth of the matter is there's very little interpretation left to the imagination at that point. And that's the part that I find the most frustrating about every aspect of the media, everyone in the Justice Division or judicial aspect of our nation, everyone involved in Congress. They all sit there and say, well, it's our job to discern what they meant. No, it isn't. Your job is to actually know what they wrote so that you could take what their intention was and apply it. And the truth of the matter is, if you're to take those arguments that they put forth and then apply them to today's modern, whatever that scenario may be, there really isn't a whole lot of interpretation that has to be left to your imagination. I keep hearing, well, the founders didn't recognize we'd have cell phones, so did they really mean that's your private area? Go read what the founders had to say about that. Apply that logic to that question, and the question is easily answered. Your conversations are private, period. End of argument. No disclaimers. I don't like this concept of saying that everything is open to interpretation. It's not. All you need to do to understand what they really meant, because that's what an interpretation is. The judges say, well, we need to understand what the interpretation, we have to formulate an interpretation to understand what the founders meant. If you want to know what the founders meant, then read exactly what they wrote. That explains it. But ignoring that which they've written and saying you're going to interpret it without having read what they meant, that, ladies and gentlemen, is a falsehood. That is an intentional and willful disregard for knowledge that is there that will help them to truly judge what's going on. This guy running for Congress, his name is Sass. He's out of Nebraska. I want you to hear it because I think it's a valuable point to hear. And I don't know how many folks listen to us in Nebraska, so I'm not endorsing him or whatever. I just think his point is well taken. I don't generally endorse candidates.
I'm Ben Sass, candidate for U.S. Senate in Nebraska. I'm just recording this video out on the campaign trail where we had a town hall last night in Imperial, Nebraska, a cattle town near the Colorado border. Just like my fellow citizens last night, I'm frightened by what occurred in Washington, D.C. yesterday. President Obama offered a supposed fix to Obamacare that would direct the Secretary of HHS to let Americans keep their insurance policy. The president did not actually fix anything, but he did provoke a constitutional crisis. Understand, President Obama cannot legally do what he proposed to do yesterday, and the media let him get away with claiming. He can't fix part of a law that he doesn't like by fiat. Our president is not a king. He doesn't get to make decrees. He doesn't even have a line-item veto under our current system of government. The only branch of government under our Constitution that has any power to change this law is the Congress. This debate is no longer only about health care, but has become much larger. It has morphed into a battle over transforming our constitutional system of separate, co-equal branches of government. This is about whether or not the Congress will cede its constitutional power to a runaway executive branch in a way that our founders never intended and would not understand. Don't take my word for it, though. Even Howard Dean, the former governor of Vermont, yesterday questioned whether the president even has the legal authority to do what he said he's going to do. He's right. President Obama does not have the unilateral authority to change parts of a law that he finds inconvenient now for political purposes. The fact that Obama rammed this bill through in the worst way possible in 2009 does not now give him the imperial power to go back and change parts of it that he doesn't like. If he had this kind of power, what's to stop him from, say, mandating what kind of cream we must take in our coffee, or mandating or expanding the individual mandate to require us to join certain kinds of gyms? What the president has done here is outrageous, it is illegal, and it is unconstitutional. If Republicans in Washington are serious about upholding their oaths of office, they must demand that Obamacare be repealed and that we start over. Republicans should absolutely refuse to be any part of an unconstitutional attempt by President Obama to prop up this bad law. If you agree, I hope that you'll email this video to family and friends, share it on Facebook and Twitter, and go to our website, sassfornebraska.com, for more information. This is an important...
Okay. I do agree, and I did just that. I just shared it with you. There'll be a link to this in the subject section. If not, you can find it on YouTube. Just type in constitutional crisis and this guy's name, Sass, S-A-S-S-E. So the point of all of this is really this, folks. The government, at this stage in the game, chooses what laws to follow and what laws not to follow. And at no point anywhere in our Constitution can you find support for that position. The president does not have the right to make unilateral choices and act upon them through executive orders or dictatorial statements. And to be honest with you, the absurdity of this entire thing is going to be very obvious very shortly when the insurance companies, who have spent an enormous amount of time and money in already redirecting their ship to fall in line with the Obamacare fleet, are going to say, hey, wait a minute. We're not going to resurrect and go through the cost of creation and development of all of this and the billings problems associated with it just to meet your dictatorial claim. It's going to fail anyway. The fix is destined to fail. And maybe that's really what he wanted all along. You're listening to America's Voice now. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, our new topic for the return is going to be 8 new coal-fired plants have shut down. And you can expect any moment now your electricity rates to necessarily, quote-unquote, skyrocket. Because that was the president's promise to us back when he ran originally. He wants necessarily your costs to skyrocket. And he's getting his way. We'll be right back. You can find us on the web by visiting us at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find our Facebook page where we post stuff up there. If you have a Facebook account, please like it, because then the stuff I post up there, and I got to post 20 things a day up there, that stuff finds its way onto your timeline, and you're automatically involving your circle of influence and exposing them to what we're talking about, which is a good thing. You don't even have to do anything. You're automatically opening up your circle of influence to us, and I'm grateful for that. If you don't have a Facebook account, then that's okay. You can still go there because it's a public page. You can still go there and read the stories and read the comments and find the articles and things like that. Use it as a resource, if nothing else, a library resource where I've already narrowed down the amount of stuff that you got to go hunt. I also comment my own personalized comments on each story I post up there, so you can see what I'm thinking about it before you actually click there. We'll be right back.